Welcome to the Art Colony, a podcast about art and art history in Provincetown. My name is Gaston Lacombe. Since 1899, the art colony in Provincetown has gone through many generations. We can say this figuratively, as in art movements or in schools of writing, but also for some families, this generational metaphor is quite literal. Over the last century and a quarter, a number of artists who came to Provincetown to learn, study, or practice their art ended up settling here and making it their home for a full year or for part of the year. Here they found a partner, they raised children, and in multiple cases, these children also became artists who continued the family's artistic tradition in Provincetown. For anyone acquainted with the art scene in Provincetown and its art history, family names such as Malicote, Packard, Del Deo, Carney, and others immediately invoke legacy and longevity. Another one of these multi-generational artist families in Provincetown is the Egeli family. And to talk with me today about her work, her family, and Provincetown is Anastasia Egeli. Welcome, Anastasia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy to have you here today. So let's start by having you tell us, who is Anastasia Egeli?
She is an artist, a creator. She is someone who was lovingly nurtured by the Provincetown community to become a very fearless expressionist artist.
So were you born and raised here in Provincetown?
I was not born here. I was
Okay.
born in Maryland.
Where in Maryland?
Annapolis.
Oh, okay, Annapolis.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I barely remember that because my parents from, from the very beginning, they packed us up in a station wagon and took us to the Cape to study painting. My parents, they met in the Art Students League in New York City. And during that time, they were, the whole city was alive with the study and pursuit of color. And a lot of them everyone who was an artist was coming up to Provincetown to study in the art colony.
So what year are we talking about?
Like let's see, 60?
Okay.
Probably the early 60s. Yeah.
And when did you first come?
I started coming up to Provincetown when I was probably about 6 or 7. It's so funny being brought up around Provincetown because I didn't think that life was any different than it is. I mean, I was brought up around artists and expressionistic people and creativity and kind of the aliveness of being yourself from the very beginning.
So you've already started to tell us, but give us a picture of what Provincetown was like as a child when you were here back in the 1970s, it was?
Yeah, people were streaking. People streaked all the time. That's something they don't do anymore. I mean, they're scantily clad, but they're not streaking. Where you have your studio
In the Whalers Wharf.
in the Whalers Wharf, there were all sorts of artists in the front doing caricatures and portraits. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I ended up being one of those portrait artists when I was about 18 years old. I joined all the old guard street artists and sat there and did portrait sketches. But it was, Whalers Wharf was such a, it was kind of like an Etsy festival. There were tiny little stalls where you could get your palm read or get a macrame bracelet with your name on it. Or, I mean, it was just vast and creative, and there was tons going on. There was just like music coming. Well, I mean, still is, but it was just a little more chaotic, probably a lot more like the last remnants of, the center of town are now, like shop therapy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
But it was packed, and it was I mean, I had so many jobs. I used to work in a scrimshaw store. We stayed open till like 11 or 12 at night because there were people packed on the street until way into the night. Now Provincetown is very civilized. It was kind of like a crazy place.
Mhm.
But also, when I was when my parents when I was younger, there were artists everywhere. They were sleeping everywhere. I would have dinner and there would be 10 or 12 people there, artists who were studying at the Cape School of Color or and they were camping out.
So what were the conversations like over dinner? I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't have artists around my table. So what were you
Well,
talking about?
it's really funny that because this does actually goes into I think I sent you what I wrote about my upbringing in Provincetown during kind of like probably the last gasp of the heyday of the art colony in Provincetown. But so Henry Henchy was who had inherited the Cape School of Color from Charles Hawthorne. Kind of like he had Pearl Street and he had dinner at our house every night and just talked about what crap all the Hans Hofmann students were and the abstract expressionists they were like they didn't know anything and talked about the purity of the color theory and color relationships. His school of thought and my parents as well, they were realists, so they were they were trying to recreate, to do observational truth, and learn the rules of color and line and form to expose the beauty and share it with their viewer. And down the road with Hans Hofmann, who they were very aware of each other, he was teaching, to use color and value to create a high state of emotion. Like, how passionate was your piece? And that was abstract expressionism. But they were both colorists, but anyway, that aesthetic, he just kind of argued the point of how right he was continually. That was dinner.
Mhm.
And then who did it, who executed it better, who was the best, who was crap, and who was sleeping with who. But like I
All the
was
important
quiet, all important stuff. But it was my parents were completely immersed and loved being in that art scene. Um, and I myself and my three brothers and sisters, we were very secondary to that. We were feral. I mean, nobody was looking after us. I mean, I think I had a fake ID at like 14 and I would go to Crown and Anchor and dance all night with the guys that I worked with at Herschel's leather or like down. I mean, it was fun. It was absolutely crazy. It's crazy.
And did you ever have people around your table with famous names?
Oh god, all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, there's always been, I think in any cultural center like that, there's always going to be a draw uh for other people who, are who get to choose how they feel in life. They're not thinking about their survival. They have the luxury of pursuing, like how emotionally rich the experience is. I think in that way, Provincetown really hasn't changed very much at all. There's lots of like an amazingly successful creatives. There were writers, there were painters, everybody came through. I mean, I ended up one of the this is really interesting because Nelson Shanks, who ended up painting Princess Di and he painted the Pope and he's passed now, but he came up to Provincetown because he was roommates with my uncle in New York when they were going to the Art Students League. And he absolutely ran with the color theory. I mean, he ended up opening a school later on in his life about it. But I probably met him, when I was a teenager. But when they were selling at the Cape School of Color at the end of Pearl Street, he actually called me and was like trying to buy it, and trying to figure out a way to hold on to that. And it was kind of an impossible situation. It was going to get developed. The Henry Henchy had not done a good job managing, that historical property. And so I ended up going and working with him to help him open his school. But he found me in Provincetown.
So, at what point did you start being an artist? Was it something predestined in your family, or were you brought up with paintbrushes and pencils all around you? When did you become an artist?
My feeling about an artist is like that you are an artist. I mean, you just you need to create. That's just, it's kind of like what you do. It's like your disposition. There's no other way. um so it was interesting growing up in an art family, because the expectation was to be an artist. There was my one brother became a lawyer, a very successful lawyer, has a law firm, and he was the shame, like that was not
this,
respectable.
this is an upside down
I mean,
world.
they made
Yeah.
him at the table.
But for you, this goes back to your grandfather. Your grandfather was an artist as well.
Yeah, my grandfather was an artist. He had 5 children. All of them were artists.
Wow.
He came over from Norway. He started working on the Merchant Marines when he was 15. So he was on a boat dodging torpedoes during the wars. He ended up in New York City. And he actually, it's really funny, interesting, kind of weird, serendipitous thing. But, I stayed in the house of uh of a painter in Provincetown who my grandfather actually studied with in New York, which was, just a bizarre coincidence that my aunt, when she came to Provincetown, was like, "Oh my God, this is so weird." And like, look at these paintings. It's interesting that, the kind of like the arc of being an artist is, especially when you are in a family of artists. And I find this with a lot of artists, they think their way is the way, they are the right. And when I was a kid, it was like the Henry Henchy way, or actually the Nelson Shanks way, or whoever. And in Provincetown, so interesting because it's such a conservative, traditional the color theory with Henry Henchy was very traditional. So, and it was like a discipline, like a craft that you were to learn, like in your anatomy, your color, your value, your line, all these rules of seeing. And I was brought up in that. So, when I got into flow and I'd be painting, my father or whoever, in order to help me, would interrupt that flow and be like, "No, no, no, you got to do it like this. You're doing it wrong." Like, like, right, and and I always felt like completely interrupted and out of sorts, because I was really feeling something there. It felt really magical. And it wasn't until I kind of, you know, um, you know, absolutely just, it separated myself from all of them and what they were doing, and kind of like, just started really identifying the voice within myself and accepting that voice within myself, and understanding that the one that was saying I wasn't doing it right was like somebody else's voice. And so when I answer your question, I'm like, yes, I always created, but I didn't create in a clean way, because there's so much conversation about whether it was right or whether it was wrong, or how I was in my piece. And I think that has been a gradual thing. But now I identify much more with the abstract expressionists because I think art at its best is very, very is a dance. It's very emotional. You can't it's the people who have decided to become strict realists, or let themselves be ruled from outside, dogma. Their work is kind of cold, and the whole reason that, and I do paint somewhat realistically, is that I'm a human having a human experience, so I'm trying to communicate why the light coming in the window feels so unique and so calming, or so something. So, my work, I feel like, has gotten more emotionally rich as I've kind of settled down the self-criticism and let my craft serve my sort of emotional center, or my spiritual center. So I would say I was always an artist, but I was kind of like in the closet, I was all the voices were so loud that were judging me, you know. That I internalized. But the thing about artists that I love and also hate is that they're just narcissists. So you gotta learn to like being a female, and also being, the daughter of a man. My father and my grandfather, they had cult followings. I mean, we had, in the wintertime, there were 20 P-towners that come and live at the farm. We never were alone.
Where were you in the winter?
Maryland, at the farm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, with the art students who came with us to live with us. We never lived without people from Provincetown at the farm.
So having a surname that you, as you said, your grandfather and your father had followings, does that put pressure on you?
Oh my god, when I was younger, oh my god, yeah. I was mortified to deliver work. Like, I was sure it was awful. Um, I was sure that my father should work on my painting and fix it. I had this, like, it wasn't good enough. And, I look back at that work now and I'm like, honey, like, that's very normal for an artist. Whether you have a parent, I mean, and I have to say, this was the most frustrating thing. The pressure was, my parents were great artists, really smart, very exciting. Everyone loved them. But as parents, they were terrible, you know? Everyone kind of was, I mean, they were passionate about their art and their students and their following and the art that they were making. And their approach to children was very conservative, very Victorian. So, it wasn't, we didn't have a close relationship. People around you, they all the time they'd be like, "Oh God, you're so lucky. You're just so blessed to be in this family and to be." And I think it was very confusing growing up because you did not feel, or I did not feel blessed. I just felt neglected. So it was very odd, and
Hmm.
it was confusing. It was confusing. I think it took me a long time to sort all that stuff out.
And were you showing your art in Provincetown when you were younger, or did that only come later?
That only came later. I did portrait sketches at Whalers Wharf
Okay,
with
yes,
Daniel
yeah.
Green and the whole gang. I think they're all passed now, but, like, I think the only person that really remembers that is, Raina.
Raina? I
Yeah.
had I had a guest here on a former podcast, Glenna Hartwell, and she's an instructor at the Cape School of Art, and she was talking specifically about the experience of drawing people's portraits in the 1970s. Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
that was a lot of fun learning about that experience.
I didn't do it until, like, the '90s.
Yeah, and it's interesting that this doesn't happen in Provincetown anymore.
It is kinda interesting, right?
And I was telling in this other podcast that since my gallery's in the Whalers Wharf in the summer, almost on a daily basis, people come up to my gallery and say, I want to get my portrait done. And
Seriously?
yes,
Yeah.
and then I have to point at the wall and say, that's not what I do. But yes,
I know.
but it's something that's very much part of the mythic aura of Provincetown, that you can come here and get your portrait done. But you were
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah. I mean, when I was doing it and before, there was a lot of artists on the street doing portraits or doing caricatures. Um, I mean, Whalers Wharf just had its own the whole front of it was portraits. And people were sitting for their portraits until like 11, as I said, until the wee hours of the night. And you get there early, like 9:30, and people be ready to get their portrait done. So I imagine their children are coming around still thinking that we are, a little bit of Paris still
Yeah.
in Provincetown.
What kind of portraits were you making? Was this with pastels or
Pastel.
yeah?
Yeah, pastels. Very blocking it out, light and shade, then like finishing off the tip of the nose and the eyes. Really simple, you know.
Well, you say very simple, but even though I'm an artist, I cannot do portraits. Okay, no, I
Have you
can.
tried?
Yes, I can, but they're not good. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that very objectively.
No, no, no. But that's also the thing is you know, as I get older, Ellen de Kooning did beautiful portraits that weren't actually accurate at all, but they were incredibly beautiful because they're so, in a way, absolutely true. Because she tried to get the spirit of the person, and she didn't worry about her drawing skills. It was a playful dance. I mean, it was kind of like she's kind of an example of someone who really who married that abstract expressionism with the traditional realists. And but she didn't. She just played,
Mhm.
and you can see in a lot of her portraits she's not worried about them being accurate. And,
And
so I'm saying go for it.
she did the official portrait of John F. Kennedy that's in the
Yeah,
Smithsonian, National Portrait Gallery.
yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that's the one. Did you
yeah,
ever I guess you didn't overlap because she was here in the 40s and the
no,
50s. Is that no, you did not overlap. You're much younger
no.
than that. Yeah.
Because you had this really powerful group of females up here, Lee Krasner and Helen Frankenthaler and Grace Harrigan and all those. I just wrote a thing, and I showed a picture of Helen Frankenthaler's painting of the harbor here in Provincetown. It's different now. I think it's different for women too. It's like, in a way, I mean, I realize they all came on the kind of coats of their partners. Not everyone, not Helen. Well, Helen was married to Motherwell, but nobody talks about Motherswell House being Helen's house.
And I think to a certain extent, we're seeing that more and more now in Provincetown since we have a lot more artist spaces opening up, like the
Yeah.
Commons, for example. Even the
Yes.
building where I am sitting right now, under me, it's extra Commons studios. And
Really?
yeah, this
Yeah.
building has extra studios from the Commons. And there you have a large number of very vibrant, powerful female artists that they have a space to work and they can show in Provincetown. They're here. I think we're seeing a bit of a renaissance of that.
Well, also, like Terrence Mack and Ken Falk, they're really trying to support the arts and the art community and the art history in Provincetown. And I think they're trying to give as many opportunities to as many artists. And as I mean, at the Commons, they let people read their scripts and do, and test musicals and do auditions. And, I think it's amazing.
And for
Um,
those listeners who might not know, the Commons is an art center that opened in Provincetown, I think in 2019. It's pretty recent. It took over an old schoolhouse and it converted it into multiple artist studios, exhibit space, conference space, and also shared working space. So a lot of people who might want to live in Provincetown, but they have a job in New York or in Washington, D.C., whatever, well, they can still be here and work from home, let's say, from that space in the Commons. And the Commons is creating these generations of artists that are going through. They have the studios for 3 years at a time, And now, as I said, in this building where I am on the bottom floor, they have sort of the spillover studios, a lot more studios. And it's a great place to incubate a lot of artists and to have
Yeah.
this effervescence of art and creativity. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
We'll
is.
bring them on the podcast eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think as you know, Provincetown, you know, being in, being a generational painter from Provincetown is an incredible blessing and advantage because Provincetown as a community, and this has always been true, that they normalize being an artist, normalize being a creative, normalize like what have you conjured from nothing. I mean, like, and that is a completely unique atmosphere than any other place that I've ever been. And when I would go to school in high school and people were trying to figure out how to fit in together or wear the same thing or have the same thoughts, I was always an outsider because of Provincetown, but it was also such a blessing because it was such a strength because I knew that the people who I knew what it was like to be loved by people who wanted me to become the full expression of myself. And that was huge advantage. Um, and I still think that is in the essence or soul of Provincetown.
Oh, very much. I often found it that since I've been here, whenever I say I'm an artist, nobody ever blinks an eye.
No, they don't.
In the past, it was like, okay, but what's your day job? Yeah,
Yes, yes. Oh,
yeah.
actually, it's so annoying. I had a show in LA last summer, and I got all dressed up like I was in P Town with like silver high heel boots on and like the whole get up. And someone asked me like, "Do you actually sell paintings?"
I had that
And
question yesterday in my gallery.
you're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it's often hard for people to understand that, you can be an artist full time. You can make a living from this. In Provincetown, it's very much a standard thing.
And also like I was just gonna, you know, you watch the Emmys or not the Emmys, the Tonys last night, and you know, I feel like the Tonys is like a pure award show, like and it's in the essence of like creativity and like a true artists. And what I think it was it Cola, he won best
Cola Cola.
performance. Yeah, and he thanked his friends.
Hmm.
He named his friends, and you think that is the real experience of an artist. It's all the hundreds or 50 or whatever tens of people that come around and like are like, no, 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 you can do it, don't give up, like this is not dumb, like create, like you're trying to have you're literally manifesting your life, manifesting your whole destiny as an artist. There's no security and you need those people around you who are like, yeah, that's totally normal, like, yeah, okay, you need to have a talk, or they encourage you and dry your tears and keep you going on your path so that you can give your gift to the world.
The same thing happened at the Emmys 2 years ago when Murray Bartlett won his Emmy for Best
Oh
Actor
yeah,
because
I
he's a
didn't see
local
that.
resident. He lives in Truro, the town just next doors, but he's a Provincetown guy. So during
Yeah,
his Emmy speech, he thanked his Provincetown
yeah,
family.
I missed that, but he's
Yeah.
an amazing man. Those are the things that are just so exquisite about Provincetown because, like you said, that's somebody who's like, what do there's no serious conversation to get a real job.
Hmm. True. Stable salaries are also valuable. But
I
yeah,
am not saying stable salaries are not
yeah.
valuable.
Mhm.
A true artist just creates like other revenue streams with their artistic outlook on life.
So do you show your art here in Provincetown?
Actually, right now I am showing my work in a gallery in Wellfleet. They're
Wellfleet, which is 2 villages over.
2 villages
Yeah.
over. Yeah. I mean, Christina Barker, who has a bookstore in the middle of town, she has some of my stuff on display.
And do you plan on coming back sometime soon? Because currently I'm interviewing you from LA, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, of course. I I think this is the first well, actually, this is the second summer that I have not been in Provincetown full time. I definitely miss it and think about it. I'm using kind of my Provincetown sensibility to paint Venice, which is my new home now.
Venice, California,
Venice,
not
California.
Venice,
But
Philly.
like, no, no, but I think I had to, for me, like to get a job, to go into that. I mean, the economics of it, I could not make it work. I could not make Provincetown. It was just too much and not, not enough. Maybe when I get older and my paintings are sold for more money, then I can easily be in Provincetown. But it was getting too stressful for me.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
you're saying you're painting in Venice right now. You're painting scenes of Venice, but can you still see
Yes.
Provincetown in those scenes?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
How?
The thing that I find so exquisite about Provincetown and to the tradition of the Cape School of Color is that because Provincetown light is so clean, you can see the color of the light. So when you're there in February, the sun is low and it has a certain kind of like extreme quality to it. Like you want to squint your eyes, but it looks cold. It feels cold. I did a painting in one of John Dowd's bedroom, looking up Provincetown, looking up the main street, and you can feel the winter, the winter light. The light is always a specific color and has a specific experience in Provincetown. And it's beautiful, whether it's snowing and it's black, or whether there's the pink light of the perfect afternoon, summer afternoon, or it has a quality to it. It's so specific. So as a colorist, you know, um, you just it's like God's love. It's like love, or like God's moment touching the world. It's like you become animated. And in Provincetown, it's just so extreme, like because the light's so clean, so you can see it really clearly. It's like, for me, it's just like very powerful. And I think my paintings show kind of depict that, because for me it's just like it's absolutely blows me away. I just get like, now I'm in a place called Venice, which is on the very west side of the West Coast. And, you know, I am experiencing it kind of with the same kind of glasses. Like I'm looking at the color of the light. I'm looking at the feeling of the air, I only notice things when it looks like something divine is drawing my attention to it and saying, pay attention. But I learned that in Provincetown. You know, Provincetown taught me how to do that, and taught me, so you ride your bike down a commercial street, and you like flick your head to the left, and it's like a little vignette of like a beautiful painting, and then go this way, and it's constant. So you're just, as a visual, hedonist, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I
But it
experience that pretty much every morning because I live
Yes.
in the West End on Franklin Street. And when I go to work, I go down Pleasant Street, then on Commercial Street. And so I go along the harbor. And as you said, you go between houses, and between every house, it looks like a painting. And every day it's different. And every day it looks like, one of the most beautiful scenes in the world. And between every
Yeah.
house, it's different because the boats
Yeah.
move, the light moves. It's,
Everything, the light,
yeah.
everything.
And
But that's the thing. I'm in Venice, right? And they have these walkways to the beach. And they start looking like Provincetown to me, but they're Venice. And I'm like, oh, they literally are like the same. The reason I love Venice is because it looks very much like Provincetown. Like I ride my bike around, I go to yoga,
so
you
you
know.
carry Provincetown with you wherever you go.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, of course.
So what's coming up for you?
I am actually flying to Augusta, Georgia, at the end of the week to paint. uh, the family of Arnold Palmer.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
doing huge painting, like, and the outside the garden, and yeah, so it'll be very it's gonna be a very exciting commission.
And when will you be back in Provincetown?
I don't know, I just was talking to Christine Balker about that today. I don't know. As soon as I can. I've already been to Provincetown once this summer or pre-summer.
But we see your name here because, your uncle, is it your uncle who owns a gallery here?
That's my brother.
Oh, that's your brother. Okay.
Yeah,
So your brother
yeah.
owns the
Egeli Gallery.
Egeli
Yeah.
Gallery, and his children are also continuing the art tradition of your family
Well, I think Christina is gonna end up being an
because
artist.
she had a show at the Commons last year.
Yeah, she did, she
Yeah.
did. I don't know if painting will be her medium. Like, I write a lot, I also paint, but just that need to kind of, to share your experience with your your fellow world travelers is like, I think that's just a proclivity. It's a great thing, I think, in our family that, everybody feels incredibly entitled to that, to be an artist, which is a beautiful thing, I think.
It is a beautiful thing, and I'm so glad we were able to discuss this and you were able to share that experience. I think I learned a lot more from talking to you right now than just from imagining what it might be growing up in an artist family.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a privilege, but you're also, it's like it's feral children, you know?
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And next time you can stop by the Whalers Wharf in my gallery.
I can't wait to see it.
I'm loving how this podcast is becoming sort of an ad for the Whalers Wharf. Every episode I do ends up having something about the Whalers Wharf in it. But anyways, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all the listeners, and until next time.